To some other trending tech news, a federal bill that will require Google and Meta to pay media outlets for news content that they share or otherwise repurpose on their platforms is going to become law, and neither tech company is happy about it. The Senate passed the bill in a final vote, and it received royal assent yesterday amid a standoff between the Liberal government and Silicon Valley giants. Meta's reaction to the bill? Well, it's decided to end news availability on Facebook and Instagram for its Canadian users. In a statement to Trending Now, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, Pablo Rodriguez, says Facebook knows very well that they have no obligations under the Act right now. Following royal assent of Bill C-18, the government will engage in a regulatory and implementation process. If the government can't stand up for Canadians against tech giants, who will? Joining us now for more on this is media expert Mohit Rast. Mohit, what was the government's intention behind Bill C-18, and do you think it ended up backfiring?
Well, unfortunately, we're in a situation right now where this bill is set to set a precedent amongst the tech community in the way that they're able to use technology and information from other news sources. And the reason that's a problem, Kelly, is because we're seeing that media companies are actually having their work published on various tech platforms, on Facebook and through Google. And unfortunately, the money's not coming back to these actual media companies. And thus you're seeing the layoffs, even though the brand is as popular as ever, and you're seeing people share this information. But at the heart of it, Bill C-18 is unfortunately a little bit too late. Because what's already happened for years is these ecosystems have been built based on news from all sorts of different directions, cloned websites, people resharing things. So while we can say we're at a tipping point in the way that news is going to be handled by social media, and in some cases blacked out on social media, we're also, unfortunately, a little bit behind in the times.
Will this impact users having access to legitimate news content?
Well, let's be honest, can a certain demographic even tell the difference anymore? We're so ingrained in being able to share information that immediately when we get it from a friend, we think it's legitimate. We don't even check the difference between a certified government news source versus something that looks great online. This is a threat to misinformation. Australia and the way that they tried to have this model in place so that more media organizations could get paid, it was short-sighted because only the big media organizations ended up getting money. Kelly, what this really does is it proves that a lot of these tech companies think that there's a one-stop solution for all of these markets.
Do you think Meta is taking a petty approach to this new law? Do you think there are ways the company could do more to make sure their users have access to credible news sources?
So, Kelly, it's not really a situation where one person's going to suffer and the other person won't. Instead, these people have to come to the table together because Meta is required in a certain demographic in Canada in order for all of the ecosystem to work, just the same way big news is required to be there for a certain element. So I think coming to the table, both of these sides, and not holding these grudge matches are going to be some of the only way. Let's not forget that Meta also has the propensity to just make products work. So they could very easily start their own news organization and start to move towards editorializing things on their own. So there's threats on both sides. Unfortunately, I do not believe that this bill is the answer.
What do you think is the answer? What should be done?
I do believe that we're in a critical situation right now for the government to step up and start creating task forces associated with how quickly technology is moving. You're not going to be able to save the media industry reactively. Media organizations want to nurture good storytelling and reaching great organizations, good people, and the stories that are reflective across the country. They can't do that with limited resources. So when we have tech and organizations at the table, understanding where the real profit is, understanding that building communities together benefits them both, then we have a solution. But instead, we're arm wrestling right now. Everyone's after the attention economy. And I think those days are past. I think Meta's responsibility to be able to reward organizations for the content that actually runs on their feeds and people pay sponsorship dollars around is important. I don't think that's going to be a pay-per-click model. I don't think that's going to be a model where every writer is going to get 1 cent off of all the traffic. But I do think that there is a bulk model to be had where both of the people understand that the audience is there for them to share and work with.
Our viewers can read more of your insights at thinkstart.ca. Thanks so much, Mohit.
Thank you, Kelly.
And this impacts us here at Trending Now and CHCH News as well. Our news director, Greg O'Brien, joins us now with more on this. Greg, Meta is doing this because they don't want to pay for news content on their platforms, but news content benefits their platforms as well. It's that give and take relationship. So how are we going to respond to this?
So it's difficult. Right now, Facebook is attempting to bully its own users and the Canadian government by pulling all of its news from its platforms, Instagram and Facebook primarily. So what's going to happen is Bill C-18 actually demands the digital platforms to negotiate a rate with news organizations like us to pay us back for the engagement that we cause on their platforms. And the CRTC will have a 6-month to a year process that will set regulations around this law, and those negotiations will take place eventually.
So what's this relationship going to look like now?
Right now, it's massively imbalanced. You know, the engagement that we deliver to Facebook is something that they've never ascribed a value to. All they talk about is outbound links back to us. They don't talk about the engagement that we provide within their platform, which leads Facebook and Google to be able to take up 85% of the $9.5 billion digital ad industry in Canada. And we deserve a piece of it because of the engagement that we drive to Facebook and Google platforms. And Canada's not the only one doing it. Australia's already done it, the EU is doing it, the US is talking about doing it. It's time for the platforms to come to the table, recognize our value, and compensate us.
All right, we'll have to see how this plays out. Thanks so much for joining us, Greg.
Thanks.